In recent times, a surge of cases globally and within South Africa has brought to light the concerning trend of individuals impersonating others, creating social media parody accounts, and engaging in misrepresentation on various online platforms.
The question on everyone's mind is whether these actions amount to a punishable crime and what threshold could lead to individuals into legal trouble.
Now, to shed light on this complex issue, joining us virtually is Arnold Mzimba, a Master of Law student at the University of Limpopo, to delve into the legal dimension of impersonation both in the real world and the digital realm. Mr. Mzimba, thank you so much for joining us right here on Inside UL News.
Thank you for having me, and greetings to Inside UL News viewers.
Mr. Mzimba, what legal challenges does this pose in terms of identifying and prosecuting individuals who are involved in this impersonation?
Okay. Now, with the technological advancements that we see worldwide, it awakens our legislature to further strengthen our legal system to accommodate these developments. If we have the National Prosecuting Authority saying it may not prosecute for lack of evidence, sometimes it is not lack of evidence per se, but the issue of identifying the actual perpetrator, given the fact that some of these crimes are committed online and it becomes rather impractical or difficult to identify the perpetrator in such cases. So it awakens our legislature to focus on developing our law to accommodate the recent trends, and also to even focus on those crimes which would appear trivial some 20 years ago, because now things have changed.
Mr. Mzimba, what legal challenges does this pose in terms of identifying and prosecuting individuals who are implicated in impersonation?
So there's a great difference or a distinction therein. When you look at someone who poses online as somebody else, there's difficulty in tracing such a person, because most of these accounts or these fake social media accounts are created with that intention of defrauding individuals or victimizing individuals online. And they, from the onset, they know that it will be difficult to trace them, given the fact that some of these social media companies are rather owned outside South Africa, where you must either get a court order to get their real identities or to have information pertaining to such an account released onto the National Prosecuting Authority within South Africa. So in real life, it is rather easier. Like we have observed, some of these individuals are actually caught red-handed, wearing either a police official uniform or with a name tag that they actually are not that person. So in real life, it's much more easier to get these individuals to account, but online it leaves the legislature with no option but rather to follow the recent trends, like many other countries are doing now, to put laws that are going to make it even more stricter to to get onto social media or to open social media accounts as such.
Now, from a legal perspective, what are the key challenges between impersonation in social media and in real life, and how do these differences impact the legal grounds for pursuing cases of impersonation?
So we do have laws in South Africa, and the recent trends of impersonators should rather awaken the legislature to strengthen its hand when it comes to enforcing penalties. When I say we do have laws, in 2019, the National Qualifications Framework Act was amended to create offenses where now it is criminalized for someone to falsely or fraudulently claim to be holding a certain qualification or to belong to a certain profession when they're actually not registered. And in the case of registration, we've got the Health Professions Act, which says, you may not diagnose, you may not advise, you may not give a treatment when you are actually not registered with the HPCSA as such. So we do have laws, even common law. We've got the common law crime of fraud, defamation of character, corporate defamation. So we do have existing laws in place to try and combat these crimes. But what is needed, from my understanding, is awareness and maybe ensuring that these individuals are brought to account so as to deter others from committing these crimes.
All right, so are there any gaps in the legal framework that need to be addressed to effectively combat this issue?
Most definitely. The fact that these criminals are still out here posing, or stealing people's identities show us the extent to which the law enforcement agency, talking about the SAPS in the instance, should go to try and enforce the law, because like we've already said, the law is there to try and combat these crimes. But now it's a question of the law enforcement agency to say, okay, fine, if someone reports this type of a crime, do not say it is trivial, or because when we measure the extent to which a person is victimized by a crime, from a legal perspective, I may not measure how far a crime impacts on a person, but when we look at a psychological angle or a financial angle in the case of defamation, that's when we can see that these crimes are not as trivial as they are usually taken to be. So there are gaps, but at the very same time, I acknowledge the progress that our country has made in trying to combat these crimes. Like I've mentioned, in 2019 there was an amendment to that act, and also in recent times we saw entry of the POPI Act, to protect the issue of personal information of individuals. So there are strides compared to other African countries. I think our country is moving in the right direction to a certain extent.
And have you come across any notable cases of impersonation either on social media or in real life? And how do these cases actually shape the legal understanding and the treatment of impersonation?
So there's a lot of case law that shows us that our courts have recently and for a long time dealt with these cases of impersonation as such. We have people posing as police officials when that is actually criminalized. They steal police uniforms. We have people posing as lawyers. They attempt to go to police officials trying to get the likes of police bail and many other things. So there is case law to that effect, and in most instances it makes it difficult for such individuals to even get remedies like bail pre-trial. But in terms of how this is now shaping the legal system now, it exposes the gaps within our law, and it further calls for a reform in terms of our legal system, to say, insofar as we already have laws, but we still have impersonators, we still have identity frauds, or people taking people's identities, it shows us the extent to which we can still go to improve our legal system.
Now, as a student who's pursuing a Master of Law, let's take, for instance, someone who's known as Dr. Lani on social media, whose case has been making round, which was withdrawn by the National Prosecuting Authority. What recommendations or legal reforms would you propose to address the complex surrounding the issue of impersonation?
So there should be a further fostering of policy initiative to lead to more clarity on the law. The law is there, but it needs to be even more clearer to say, in the case you are suspected of having committed this crime, how then do we go about punishing you? Now, when you talk about punishment, you look at the purposes of punishment, one of them being deterrence. We need to deter others from committing this crime. We need to incapacitate you, because when we talk about this crime, they're not as trivial. They can be financial losses, or when we look in the context of corporate defamation. So I think there must be further policy initiative and more awareness on the law, so that individuals are aware of the law, so that they are not found to be on the wrong side of it.
Mr. Mzimba, please tell us, do organizations like universities have to sue those using their names? Is it practical that would be like an ant and an elephant?
I wouldn't say they have to sue, but I would rather say they have to take action, because we are looking at their identity as a corporate organization or as a university as such, because they have a right to their good name. Suing may seem harsh or rather impractical, but action should be taken, like in the case of a student or any person posing as a student. The university can rather demand that the student make a public apology or rather the universities can focus on more awareness campaigns on these existing laws that criminalize the acts of impersonation.
All right, so many social media profiles online seem to have either false credentials or exaggerated. Is that a crime?
Yes, it is a crime. Like I've already said, with the National Qualifications Framework Act being amended in 2019 now, no one may pose either online or in person or howsoever to be holding a certain qualification when they actually do not hold such a qualification. We've got Section 32B, subsection 3 of that act, which criminalizes that act of claiming to be holding a certain qualification, and also the common law crime of fraud, because in most instances, an individual misrepresents themselves to be holding a certain qualification with the view of getting a certain benefit now that amounts to fraud in that case, if it may be proved. But then also we must look at the issue of whether someone actually suffered any loss or prejudice. And also it becomes rather difficult in some cases. You find that it is not easy to prove that a person created a false account with a criminal mind. So it is not always that when someone poses as this, we will say they are suspected or they are guilty of a certain crime. So it always goes back to the question of saying, is there anybody who suffered harm as a result of this individual posing as a doctor or as a lawyer when they actually are not, or to be holding a certain qualification when they do not hold it? Because in all honesty, it may not be sound legally to prosecute someone when there is no actual victim.
All right, Mr. Mzimba, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Well, more of your